We're going to do some real exciting stuff with Visual C++ in this unit. Just look at the exciting stuff we're going to do in this section. We're working with a forms project again. You remember how you liked that drag and drop stuff? Instead of doing all that typing, we're going to add the menu strip. We're going to add the data grid, and you'll really like this feature. We're going to add columns and rows to a grid, and we're going to use an XML file. It's kind of like an HTML file. It's made for the internet, but you're going to like how smooth it makes adding features to your project. So just plan, when you plan your project for your organizer, just think of what kind of things you want your organizer to keep track of. Movies, games, whatever you want. It's your program. Just like last lab, this lab starts with our forms project and we add a file menu to it. So as usual, you open up your C++. Now when my form opens up, I right click in the form and I go to properties. So next thing I do is I scroll down my menu in properties here until I find the word text. And I call it organizer. Next I come down and look for the word size. I change that from 300 to 400 500. Width 400, height 500. Click enter. Now I'm going to debug my form, make sure it works. So I go to debug, start debugging. Click yes. This is what I should see. Okay, if you don't see that, just go back and see what you missed. Next thing we're going to do is add a menu strip. You guys have seen menus before. What program have you used that you haven't seen a menu for? Okay, it's a bar at the top of the window with one or more menus on it, okay? We're going to create a menu strip using the menu strip object. The menu strip object, it just creates a menu bar at the top of a form. Once you got that up there, you can add menus to it. So if you haven't turned on your toolbox yet, now's the time. Go click View, Toolbox. Now go in your toolbox and open up your Windows forms and go find the menu strip. Then just click and drag menu strip and put it onto your form. That's exactly what it should look like. See where it says type here? Just type in the word file. Now here in the lower spot, this is type here. Just type in the word exit. Just click enter. Okay, an interface object that is something that does something when you click it. Right? If you want to program an interface object, normally with C++, you just double click it and that'll open up the program page and you just insert your program there. Really easy. So what you do is double click exit. Now just type in the code, click enter, and just click close, parentheses, semicolon, you're done. That's all there is to do to code it. So now you're going to debug. You just click the save all button. Then you just click debug, start debugging. This is what your program should look like if you debugged it correctly. If you didn't, go back and check your code again. Okay, in lab 2 we're going to add the columns so that you can start putting in your the things you're going to organize. The next object we're going to add is called a data grid. Data grid is just a list with columns and rows. Just like, you know, if you use Excel or maybe if you used Access, you know, a database, you have columns and rows, or you can add information. Well, that's what a data grid does. So to add a data grid, we got to use a data grid view object. So we're going to click the Form 1H design. We're going to go find our data grid view object. We're going to drag it onto our form, and they're just going to resize it so we can fill up our screen with this. Just leave a little space on each side. In your project, you can have many grids. It's always a good idea to rename your grid so you know what you're looking at. I mean, when you say data grid view 1, data grid view 2, that doesn't mean anything to you normally, so it's usually a good idea to rename them. So you just use the name property here to give a new name to your object. Not all objects will have this property, but when they do, it's always a good idea to use it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click in my gray area and click properties so I can bring up my data grid view properties. And I come down to my design tab and I change this name. To my grid. Now, if you really want to confuse your computer, go and name something name. Your computer just going to get all crazy on you. You really got to watch properties. You can't name an object what the property name is going to be, okay? You got to name it. We're going to name our column item name, okay? So that's just so you know. So now I'm going to add my columns. I come all the way over this corner. See this little arrow thing here? I just click this, and I click add column. So I call this item name. So we call it item name, and we call the header text item name, and we just click add. Now I'm going to add another column, and I'm going to call this one category. So I give it the name category, and I use the header text category. Click add. Then I just click close. So it should look like this. So now you're going to check your work. Just click debug and click start debugging. Click yes. So when you debug it, this is what it should look like. If it doesn't, go back and try adding your columns again. Just delete everything and try adding them again. In Lab 3, we're going to add our XML file. XML is used for all kinds of different things in your project. XML just stands for Extensible Markup Language. XML files are just a certain type of text files. You're familiar with this kind of file if you've ever done web design and you've worked with HTML files. Same kind of idea. They have the extension XML. And they can be edited just like any other text file. So you can store programming languages. You put information in there pretty easily. Now to open up a XML file, just go to File, New, File. Then just put General. Then just choose XML file and click Open. So now I'm going to save this file. So I go File, Save, As, and I'm going to call it Data. Make sure I'm in. There we go. Call it Data. So now we're going to add our XML file to the project. All I do is go right click Organizer, then I click Add, then I click Existing Item, then I just choose my data XML file and click Add. That's all you do. XML elements have names, like for example, here's a list name that is an XML agent. So everything inside of this deals with that list, but you can see you open it and you close it. That slash means close the list. So you open it and close it. So those are tags. And it's similar to curly brackets in C++. Anything that deals with a list has to go between those two elements. So now I'm going to go add my tags. So right after the only line of text I have in this whole paragraph, I'm going to go add my tag. I'm just going to type in there, click enter, I'm going to type in there, sorry, list. I'm just going to click and add a couple spaces between the opening and closing thing, and that's where I'm going to add my stuff. Sometimes you can combine an opening and a closing tag, like in this item here. See, item with a slash, that's just a combination of these two opening and closing tags. And it just makes things a little easier. So we're going to do this with our next tag. So now we're going to add a couple new elements here. So we're right inside of our list tag here. And we're going to just go click and we're going to type item. And we're going to type it again. So we have two new items here. You'll modify an element with an attribute. All it does, it further defines what you want in that element. So in this case, your item is called Paris. Paris actually is a value. You know, variables can contain values, so can attributes. Now in the first item element, click just after item, before the space, before the slash, caret. Press the space bar, then type in your item name equals. Notice that the quotation marks were created for you. Between the quotes, type in the name of one of the items of your organizer. Then you're going to put in the category. Then of course you just go and do the same thing with the other item. And do another category. You can add items to your organizer by adding more item elements to your XML file, but that's all we need for right now. So now I'm going to go run my debugger. Click debug. Click start debugging. Go yes. Now you notice that your program doesn't look any different from the last time you checked it. You're going to add code to get your data from the XML file in the next lab. So, but make sure that you're, if this is not compiling for you, if it's not debugging, then make sure that you've done the proper steps and just go back and redo them. Now in lab 4, all we need to do is add our code so we can display the items, that the data we added to our XML file. So now at the end of this lab, your program is going to have those two items in your data grid. Now before we can code with XML, we need to allow the XML namespace. So we're going to type in using namespace system XML. Just like using the standard namespace. Now I'm going to go to my Form 1H Design tab. I'm going to right click anywhere on the form except the blue title bar, and then click View Code. Now I'm going to go find the using namespaces line and add my using XML namespace. When we talk about a dataset object, we're talking about an element that holds information in the computer's memory. It just, it stores information in columns and rows for you. It's a really good, nice object to use. Just like you have to declare a variable, you have to declare your dataset object. The computer has to know that you're going to use it. It's just a little bit different with how you declare objects before. You're going to use a caret symbol. And you have an example of that right here. That's a declaration. We talk about data management with object. The reason you use a caret is because you want to throw away information you don't use after you've completed using the object. It just helps keep that programming lean and trim. It really helps your program move more smoothly. To declare our dataset object, we're going to call it DSList. Okay, I'm going to declare the dataset object. It's going to be called DSList. The DS is short for dataset. So I'm going to find the line that's called to do, add the constructor code here. Near that line is a protected command. Find the protected command, then add a few lines of empty space above it. One of the empty lines you're going to write dataset with your caret and DSList. Just like we double-clicked an object to code it, and we went into the coding area exactly where it should go, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to double-click the form, and that'll put us exactly where we should be when we're coding the next item. Now that we've declared our dataset object, we need to create it. So the code's going to look like this. DSList equals GC new dataset list. DSList is the name of the new data space object. GC new, that's the command that's going to tell the computer to create a new dataset object. And list here tells the computer that the dataset object will store the information in the list element. To program my form to get information from my XML file, I'm going to have to create the dataset object I declared earlier. So the code is going to go like this. I open up my form, double click it, and it takes me exactly where I need to go. So I just click enter, and then I do my code right there. DSList is the name of the new dataset object. GCNew is a command that tells the computer to create a new dataset object. And list tells the computer that the dataset object is going to store information in that list element. A lot of times when you're in an object and you want to code the object, you usually use the word this to refer to the object. The main object the code is in anyway. In this case, you're going to use this to refer to the form that you're adding the code to. Instead of typing out the name of the code of the form each time, it just makes your programming a little easier. We're going to use the dash greater than object operator to tell the computer which object's method we're going to use. It also can point to an object. We can here use an example of car, engine. The engine object in the code is the engine that belongs to car 1. Under this line that I just typed, I'm going to type this with my dash greater than symbol. Then I can go DSList with my dash greater than symbol. Then I can go read XML. So what am I going to read? I'm going to read my data XML file. Of course, with semicolon at the end. So what have we done so far? We've got the program to read the XML file, and we've got it to store the data in the dataset object named DSList. What we still need to do is we need to write code that's going to display the data in the data grid. So we're going to add code to do that. So now we're going to add the code that tells the data grid to get data from the DS list and to read every item in the data as a new row. So right below this line that we wrote here, go to the end and click enter. I'm going to type this dash greater than. I'm going to go my grid. That's the name of my grid. Then the dash greater than symbol. I'm going to say data source equals, then what did I call it? DS list. The semicolon. This code is going to tell my grid to use DS list as its data source. So now I've got code that tells my grid to use DS list as its data source. So now I'm going to type a new line, and I'm going to type this my grid data member equals item. And don't forget your semicolon. This code tells my grid to read each item as a new row or data member. So now I need to debug. So I'm going to save everything. Click my Save All button. I click Debug, and then just start debugging. If you debug your code, then you'll come out with looking like this, with a couple extra columns. Now we're going to go in here and we're going to fix this where you only have a couple columns and where people can't add extra stuff here. So you're going to make it read only. Now if your code doesn't work, come here to page 17 in Lab 3. And make sure that, or Lab 4 rather, and make sure that your code matches up with what they have here. Okay, make sure you've got this in the right place where you have private my grid. Remember you added that this lab? Make sure you added this, the close statement, and make sure that you added this. Oh, from the DS list down to here. Okay. Make sure you double clicked in the right place. You double clicked on the title bar. Go back and check these things out. And you'll be all right, okay? Now we have to solve the problem of the extra columns and people being able to add extra information. So now you're going to edit the data grid's property. What you're going to do is you're going to look for the columns. So we're going to do a Control F. We're going to find what? We're going to look for columns. Click Find Next. And now what we're going to do is put the we're going to comment out that column. We're going to go to the form H1. Now, if you don't have your data grid here, if it's disappeared, go back and uncomment them and comment them after you do the next steps. Okay, so this should look like yours. See, that disappears. Now you go to Properties. And you come down and you look for allow user to add row, make that false. Also allow user to delete row, make that false. Then come on down to read only, make that true. If you come over to the Form 1H Design tab and you find that your grid has disappeared, go back and uncomment it. Do this stuff that you just did here with the read only and that. And then go back and put your put your lines there to comment that line out, okay? It's just a technical issue. Your code should work if you do that. So, if you've done everything right, you should come out with it looking like this. If you haven't, we'll just go back and check for errors. You can check your work right here. Make sure that your code looks like this. Once again, the thing that you did was you commented out this line that added the extra text. See this one right here? This my grid that you commented it out. And you went back and you did some other things to your categories. But so you should end up with your code looking like the example. And that ends Project 7.